Once again, live streaming from Automate. My name is Matt Kirkner. I am the host of the Tech Ed Podcast. This Automate show is absolutely incredible. If you love robots, if you love vision systems, we'll edit that out. If you love vision systems, if you love sensors, smart technology, smart devices, and automated technologies, especially autonomous mobile robots, this is the place for you. And this is actually the episode for you. We are live streaming, by the way, from the Pasnyk Education Pavilion here at Automate. Pasnyk, of course, the largest robotics and CNC manufacturer on the planet. Happy to be partnered with them. Just had their CEO, president and CEO, as a matter of fact, Mike Chico, with us for a number of minutes. Absolutely phenomenal show and an absolutely phenomenal guest. We have Evan Pasnyk. Evan is the Partner Program Technical Manager for OTTO Motors. We're going to learn all about OTTO Motors. We're going to learn all about Evan and his background, careers in automation, careers in technology, and what's going on in the world of education relative to autonomous mobile robots. So, Evan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
So we've had OTTO on the podcast in the past. Your CEO was on with me from IMTS late last year, I guess, maybe last fall. But tell us, for our audience members who may not be completely familiar, a little bit about OTTO Motors.
Sure. So OTTO Motors was founded in about 2015 through Clearpath Robotics. We specialize in industrial AMRs, so specifically looking at material transfer within industry, moving pallets, moving products from one station to another. So I mean, really, really high level. That's really what we do.
Yeah. So if you think about maybe people that aren't familiar with autonomous mobile robots, and in particular, you're literally moving material around a distribution facility, around a manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
Like maybe traditionally we would do it with a fork truck, but there's oftentimes no forks and there's no driver, right?
Absolutely. So typically in industry, you're going to see fork trucks, pump carts. You're going to see people pushing carts around manually. And historically, that's really how material movement has been done.
Sure.
Typically, humans are quite flexible. They're able to make decisions on the fly. So it's been quite reliable in just how it's done to date. With the invention, creation of AMRs, technology has gotten to a point where a lot more of those decisions that humans can make,
right,
we can have technology make.
Got it.
So we can start replacing or really having humans do much higher labor tasks, much smarter tasks, and leave the transport to vehicles now. So where a traditional fork truck would move a pallet, we at OTTO Motors actually have Auto Lifter, which is a fork-based AMR.
Okay.
So we can start doing pallet movement throughout the facility. We can move around objects, and we can do that horizontal transfer, but that we still have the operators at either end doing the really high-value tasks of, the product manipulation and other items. So we're really looking at those kind of long transport, horizontal movement of product within a facility.
So autonomous mobility has been around for a while. I mean, I can think going back, 10, 15 years ago with kind of the AGVs that were, following a line. You put some kind of technology in the floor, and this, this material transfer technology can move material around a manufacturing operation or a distribution, logistics, and so on operation. Tell us, in the new world of these autonomous mobile robots, how does that differ from maybe the traditional, what we would call an AGV?
Absolutely. So AGVs have been around, like you said, for decades. They're an old technology. They're an established technology. The difference between AMRs and AGVs really comes down to how we navigate within a facility.
Mm-hmm.
So an AGV, like you mentioned, we're going to follow tape. We're going to follow sort of an embedded strip of metal. They're going to do QR codes. Going to have reflectors, something that actually dictates the exact path they can follow. So as they're traveling from A to B, it's a very linear, very discrete path. Kind of think of it like a train. You can follow a rail from A to B, and that's the path you take. When you start looking at AMRs, we start opening up a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom. So we are not defined or confined to a path, right? So we can start going, if aisle A is closed, I now have the freedom to choose aisle B. If there's a pallet in aisle A and it's kind of partially covered, I can just move around that pallet. If I have the space, I can navigate right around it. So we start opening up a lot more freedom for the vehicles to act, as kind of mentioned earlier, much more humanistically.
Yep.
Right. And we start having the ability to effectively get from A to B, hopefully a lot quicker, a lot smoother, and without interruption.
So that helps us understand kind of the activity of what's actually happening, which is fascinating and really opens up the opportunities for the deployment of these technologies in ways that we've never been able to do it before, which makes
Mhm.
it really exciting. Let's go into the back end technology a little bit. Sensors, LiDAR, and then the
Mhm.
software that kind of makes this whole magic work, because it's not just as simple as like programming this thing. I mean, you've got all these other technologies that are at work. Tell me about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Automotors, we are full stack development. So we design our own hardware. We have the autonomy on the vehicle. We do the full fleet management. So we're a full solution provider. What that means really is on our vehicles, you kind of mentioned the LiDAR. So that
Yep.
is going to be the base. That is going to be kind of the most important sensor input to our
Sure.
technology. The LiDARs are used to really see the physical world around the vehicle. So as the LiDAR starts scanning its area, we're picking up all of the physical infrastructure, the people, all of the physical things we can now start seeing around us. We combine that LiDAR input. We also have encoders on our wheels. We have IMUs in the vehicles. We have a lot of data that we're intaking to learn a lot more about the world around us in order to figure out where we are. So our technology is based on what's called natural feature recognition, right? So, like the AGVs who follow a line, we will just know kind of what's around us by looking at your facility. So,
Okay.
when you bring an AMR into your factory for the first time, you walk it around just like you'd walk around a brand new operator. You'd show them where, where the washrooms are, where the lunchroom is, where their work cell is, things like that. You do the same thing for AMRs,
Right.
and they build a map. We take that map and we build upon it so that the vehicle can reference it,
Cool.
right? So as the vehicle is driving around, it's going to notice, oh, hey, I know where the washroom is. I know where the break room is. I know where work cell one is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to automatically find out where it is. That's how we build in the flexibility, because we're just using your natural factory as a way to localize.
Sure, absolutely. And you just think about where we are with this technology and machines being able to see as they're moving around manufacturing plant. I spent 23 years as a manufacturing CEO. I know advanced manufacturing, I think, fairly well. You've noticed about anything after 23 years fairly well. But the advancements in this technology in the last several years are really
Massive.
they're awesome. They're totally mind-boggling. You used a term that I love, that whole full stack term and the full stack
Yeah.
development. I know what that means, certainly, but for our audience members who don't know what you mean when you reference full stack, tell me about that, and then talk about some of the people that are working at Auto Motors that are actually doing this work.
Sure. So we design everything from the core software, the drivers on the vehicles. We design it all the way up through the user interfaces, the autonomy that runs on the vehicle, the fleet management system. So it's full kind of right down to the nitty gritty of what the vehicle is thinking, all the way up to the pretty interfaces, the beautiful looking interfaces that we have on what the operators are actually working on. So Automotors is based out of Kitchener, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
We have been since Clearpath was invented back in 2009.
Sure.
And the wonderful thing about Kitchener Waterloo is we have a wonderful crop, I guess, of technical wealth,
Awesome.
right? So Waterloo is very famous for BlackBerry,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when BlackBerry was
It was RIM
created,
Technologies back then, right? Yeah.
absolutely. So it brought in a whole ton of amazing people to
Mhm.
work at that company. Obviously, we all know the story of BlackBerry, and as things ended up, there was kind of, again, a wealth of technical expertise in that area. So it was kind of really great that in 2009, when Clearpath was started, we have two universities in Kitchener Waterloo, plus some technical colleges. We had already a really great base of technical expertise, with BlackBerry bringing a lot of people to the area. So it was sort of this perfect storm of excellence to bring in an amazing crew of engineers who could
Mhm.
start working on all this, that
Right.
fantastic experience, fantastic backgrounds. And that's really where Automotors and Clearpath Robotics kicked off. So once we started building, we have a large portion of our employee base is still engineering,
Mhm.
working on our core product, and that's really what we're focused on quite highly, is doing those kind of things.
Absolutely. As I've had an opportunity to meet many members of your team over the course of the last several years, incredible wealth of knowledge and experience and innovation that's taking place
Yeah.
really makes you excited for what the future holds. I know you're making a number of big announcements here at Automate, talking about your dealer network, maybe talking about some new and up and coming technologies. What are you excited about here at Automate that you're announcing to the world?
Yeah, so the biggest thing here is really announcing our dealer network, like you mentioned. So we are partnering up with some of North America's largest fork truck dealers. So the likes of Eastern Lift Truck, MH Engineering, Pop A, TMHS out of Atlanta. And we have fantastic guys down in Costa Rica by the name of Larcy. So we're really partnering up with a fantastic crew of dealers. The reason that's exciting is what they do day in and day out is material handling.
Right.
They're very used to figuring out complex projects of how do I get product from A to B. It sounds simple to get product from A to B, but it
be
isn't.
complicated. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is what these guys do day in and day out. So bringing the AMR technology to these guys is a very natural fit. It's really what they think about all the time. Beyond just the really good technology fit,
right?
They also bring in a large array of coverage.
Okay.
So they have hundreds of salespeople. They have thousands of technicians constantly doing maintenance on these machines. So as we deploy nationally and throughout North America, we're going to have access to a wide group of people who are able to help service, and they're going to be right around the corner. So what it means for our customers is much faster response times, really close. So we have offices now through our partnerships kind of located all across the US. So we're going to have a lot more coverage and be able to access that much quicker.
And be able to scale much more quickly. Obviously, you're going to have the benefit of having all the business development people from all these companies out in the field every single day, evangelizing for the amazing technology that you have, getting people excited about how this can help, reduce cost and improve efficiency, probably reduce things like lost parts or misplaced orders. All these other benefits that come from the autonomous mobile robot world is going to be alive and well. You're going to have, I imagine, quite a challenge upskilling now all these new technicians, and so you've got to be working quite diligently on that to make sure that these folks that are going out in the field are able to deliver the same level of technical expertise and support that your great team is. Is that a big part of this as well?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for us is, if you see it at our booth here, if you come to Automate, it's the auto certified program is what we're launching, right?
Right.
So we're standing behind all of our dealers. We have a large amount of training that all of our dealers are going through, not just from, deployment, but also service, maintenance, sales training. So all of our dealers are going to be highly trained in all of those areas you kind of mentioned. So it absolutely is, because ultimately it's our brand that we're protecting, and we need to realize that these guys are going out there selling. So absolutely, yeah, there's a large portion of training that needs to go into it.
And now you've got to be scaling up on the back end for all the growth, right? Assuming that the proliferate the way they already have and will continue to. Now you've got the manufacturing challenges that go with making sure you're filling demand and making sure you're thinking through supply chain and so on. And I've got to believe that's a big focus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes down to forecasting, right?
Right.
So understanding what's coming in the future, understanding on, what are the big orders, what are things happening is going to be critical. So a lot of back end work for all that kind of report is definitely happening to make sure we're scaling appropriately.
Awesome. So let's think now about, speaking of scaling, speaking of training, one of the things that we're huge advocates for is getting these technologies in the hands of young people and people of all ages, getting them excited, getting them exposure to these great brands, understanding how to program them, understanding how to operate them. So talk a little bit about what Auto Motors is doing in the field of upskilling the next generation of the workforce around advanced manufacturing technology.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, education is a huge importance. As I mentioned, Kitchener-Waterloo is very much an educational, it's a college town, right?
Sure.
So we very much understand and appreciate the importance of good education, good training, and as it relates to the workforce. So we have partnered with several education distributors around North America, and we're working towards getting our technology into these schools, into these technical colleges, and into these universities, really just to expose the students to this technology.
Sure.
So AMRs is still newer, right? So we all know PLCs, robotic arms, they've been around for a long time, and they're fantastic technology. A lot of these universities have that technology and are able to train students.
Right.
So as students start to graduate, they have the skills, the capabilities, the awareness of, hey, I've used, a Pasnyk robot in the past. Let me use that again. Let's keep that going in the field. So we're looking at it very much the same of, hey, AMRs are becoming much more popular in industry. Why don't we start from the ground up, right? So get the students trained so that the moment they graduate, they can go to like even one of my dealers and say, hey guys, I've been trained in auto. Is there a job here for me? And absolutely the field is growing very quick. So that kind of approach where we're getting into the education, doing the very early training,
Yep.
I think it's just going to be incredibly beneficial for us moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, and it's certainly it's being advocates for the technology. It's having the skill when they get there. We need to build up this next level of the workforce. And then also, as some of these students are maybe going into companies that are just on the front end of adopting these types of technologies, actually advocating and evangelizing for how we can use them to, like we said, reduce waste, improve safety. All these different opportunities to drive manufacturing forward. To that point, in terms of going into a new company and maybe coming up with a new technology, what are some of the objections or concerns that you hear from people as they're considering implementing AMR technology, and then what are some of the answers to those concerns?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, I would say to date, is just the awareness of AMRs.
Mm-hmm.
People are, when you tell them, hey, I can drive a vehicle around and I don't need tape, I don't need a magnetic line,
Right.
they're very skeptical.
Okay.
Right. So they tend not to maybe believe what we're selling because, hey, sales guys will say anything to sell sometimes. Right. So really, those are the objections of, can the product actually do what you guys are saying?
Sure.
Right. So, and again, through our dealer network here, the wonderful thing is, like I said, we have offices all over the place through them now, right? So we're able to bring our technology to site, or I'll have a site that has our technology really close to a customer, and we can now start showing, like, hey guys, I'm not just saying it, I can prove it.
Right.
And here's where it is, right? We're safe. How are we safe? Well, here, walk around my vehicle, show you how it stops, show you how it plans around you,
Yep.
right? And we can start having those conversations where the physical vehicle is in front of you. And I'm not just telling you, you're living it, you're seeing it.
Right.
So that's probably one of the biggest things that we see.
Cool. And once people are familiar with it, once they work around it, once it's been proven to them that it's not going to run them over, and then also all the other benefits, as we've already discussed, then you start to get that adoption. It's a really, really exciting time to be in the space for the base technology and also some of the integration that you're doing. So it's not, in many cases, just the AMR. It's really, how do we integrate with other factors or aspects of industrial automation to give the customer the best of both worlds. So talk a little bit about how you're integrating with, robots, for as one example, and maybe some other technologies.
Yeah, for sure. So AMRs are typically one piece of a total solution.
Mm-hmm.
Transporting a product from A to B, the driving portion of it, which Automotors is excellent at, is one piece to the solution.
Sure.
So you're absolutely correct. We typically need auxiliary automation. We need auxiliary pieces to really make sure that we're providing a full solution, not just a product, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to solve something for our customers. So when we start looking at, factories, what's available, what are we integrating with, that's really where a lot of our strengths also lie. So our vehicles are very much designed to hold attachments. So we have electronic outputs, we have power outputs, we have IO on the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking to, in a really cool use case, you could have, say, a 6-axis robot mounted on top of a vehicle, and
Sure.
we could do machine tending or something with it, right? So we'll provide the power. Like I said, there's available IO to communicate between the two pieces of automation. Or we could do maybe something slightly simpler in one of a very simple use case, or a common use case, I should say, is a palletizing use case.
Sure.
So you could have a 6-axis robot doing a whole bunch of palletizing on pallets. Once that pallet is complete, you can call our vehicles over to move it to, say, like a wrapping station or a shipping station or something of that nature, right? So very much so, we need to be able to communicate to all these different types of technologies. We need to make sure we're flexible and adaptable enough to even offer that kind of solution, right? We're not cornering ourselves to just one type of solution, but
Sure.
really open to a lot of different things. So to that extent, we have a bunch of APIs that we can use.
What's an API for our audience that may not be familiar?
Yeah, so I apologize. I actually forget the acronym.
Right. Okay.
But it's a way to connect and communicate to
Got
our
it.
technology.
Okay. Got it.
And we can then communicate to PLCs, we can communicate to robotic arms, we
Sure.
can communicate to a whole bunch of different systems in
Mhm.
order to understand what's the state of the product, when do we need to pick it up, how do I drop it off, even going into safety, making
Yep.
sure where I'm dropping it off is safe, where I'm picking it up is safe, all those kind of things. So the interoperability between our vehicles and the facility and all the other automation is absolutely critical.
Awesome. So you just mentioned some really fascinating applications, some fascinating integrations. If you were to tell the story, Evan, of like, and you don't have to name the company if you're not at liberty to, but like the coolest deployment of AMRs that you've been involved with. Kind of tell us that story from product to technology to integration to, kind of the overall benefit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I have the coolest one off the top of my head. I've been with the company for 7 years. You're asking me to dig back in memory a little bit
Yeah,
here.
right. We'll come up with one that occurs to you.
So one of them that I really do like I mention now, Berry Plastics. We have a fleet of Auto 100s tending to injection molding machines.
Okay.
And once those injection molding machines are complete, we have the loaded cases. We can bring them to a palletizing. So we're actually going to be feeding into the palletizing machine.
Yep.
And once the palletizer is done, we have a fleet of Auto 1500 AMRs taking them away.
Okay.
So we've been able to fully automate that process right from the injection molding machines where we're making single little pieces all the way to the finished product that's going to be shipped out to kind of the next stages. The reason that's really neat is that was typically done completely manually before. You had people running around the entire facility using fork trucks or carts or whatever it might be in order to move all these things. And we were able to fully automate it, and we were able to reallocate all of that labor into different areas of higher value, right? So a lot of companies are seeing labor shortages now. They're unable to hire people.
Right.
So if I'm able to come in and say, hey, I can do all this with vehicles. You don't need to worry about your hiring process. I can take your well-trained operators and we can use them elsewhere that provides even higher value for you. I mean, that's huge for companies, right?
Absolutely. That's the name of the game right there. And it's nobody can find people. And once we find great people, we want to hang on to them. We want to keep their jobs interesting. These are great ways to redeploy them into maybe even more value added opportunities within the organization. So that's really, really important. Speaking of those people that are working in a manufacturing operation, what are some of, when we're deploying this technology in an operation, manufacturing, distribution, whatever it is, who's responsible for that implementation and deployment typically, who maintains it, how much maintenance is required? I mean, what are these people doing and what are the jobs in and around the AMRs?
So in terms of deployment, that's where our partner network is really going to come into play, right?
Sure.
So Automotors being the OEM, we do our technology extremely well. And then we partner with some of the best companies in the world to deploy our technology and deliver a solution, right? So like I said, Automotors is typically one piece of a solution. So then we partner with the companies that can deliver the full solution to the customer, right? After that, again, our dealer network, their expertise is really within maintenance and after sales support and things like that, right? So absolutely, we can offer all of those services to our customers. We can make sure the fleets run for years to come,
right?
And make sure that they're maintained quite well, right? We also have capabilities to do some training. So if the customers have in-house maintenance teams that want to be trained, we can definitely look into that, offer some training. And then we have all the backstops there for, if there's maintenance they don't want to do, larger upgrades, whatever it might be.
Sure.
We have, roads and avenues to go down to make sure the customer is well serviced in all areas.
Got it. So let's turn the conversation to the discussion around future innovation. I mean, if you had told me 10 years ago that we would be in an age where we've got, basically machine learning enabled, basically driverless fork trucks, if you, for lack of a better term, but robots that are driving themselves around manufacturing and distribution facilities, understanding their own environment, knowing ahead of time if they're gonna clog an aisle in between two shelves, that one of them is going to redirect itself on its own without a person doing anything. Those kind of things. I mean, you wouldn't have even imagined that, right? And yet here we are in this day and age. If we look forward 10 years, without giving out any secrets, what are the kinds of innovations that you think are going to happen in the space that we're not quite there yet, but we'll have in 10 years?
Yeah, so a big thing is going to be, I'd say maybe form factors.
Okay, right? Tell me about that.
So right now, especially from Automotors, or particularly with Automotors, I should say, we have unit load vehicles. So you load a product on top of the vehicle. Last year, we released our first fork truck vehicle to be able to do kind of floor to floor, floor to stand kind of transports, right? So we
pick up standard pallets in a manufacturing operation as opposed to having to get underneath them and
things like that, right? So realistically, we're addressing a certain portion of the market. Right. So I think, as the years go by and in 5-10 years from now, we'll be looking at, hey, how much more can we address? How much more value can we start bringing to the market? Right. And the big thing is everything needs to work together. Right. So I can't have an isolated fleet of, unit loads. I can't have an isolated fleet of forks. Everything needs to be talking to each
Sure.
other. So the connectivity is going to be huge going forward as well, right? Making sure that you have the smart factories, making sure you have the factories that are delivering value 24/7, and you can trust them and they're safe.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. That's going to be fascinating to look into the future and see everything that you just talked about, but particularly all the integration of the different technologies. And
Absolutely.
then, how about data? I mean, these things are driving around, they're gathering tremendous amounts of data, right? And it's not just where am I and what's around me, but what loads did I pick? Where did I take them? How much
Yep.
time did it take? How long was it between charging? I mean, all these different things. Are there ways that you're thinking about using the vast amounts of data that these machines can pick up while they're basically out in the field, surveying the entire operation?
Absolutely. So currently we actually have a lot of that back end data. So all of our installs are shipping with kind of all these access to that data. So
Okay.
if you're sort of an industrial engineer, you can start digging into exactly what you said. How long does the mission take, right? Not even maybe how long does the mission take, but does the mission take different times from shift 1 to shift 2 to shift 3?
Huh.
Is this an operator thing? We can now look at higher training, things
Right.
like that, right? So there is so much data that these vehicles are always collecting as they drive, right? And the data tells you a lot about the lifeblood of your facility,
Right.
right? It's material movement. How quickly can I get material from A to B is really going to drive your throughput. It's going to drive the efficiency of all your operations. So without really giving too much away,
Yep.
I can certainly say it's the back end data of it is definitely of a real interest to us going forward.
Absolutely. And are your clients able to extract that data and then use it in whatever AI platform they want? I mean, are they able to go to that level, or is it not quite there yet?
So right now we're able to expose that data in a really nice user kind of friendly way.
Okay.
We're going to be working towards getting more of that, more back end data exposed, more things you can do with that data,
Sure.
right? But kind of all future things to come.
Yeah, so like any business, it's almost becoming as much a data and analysis company as it is a deployment and hardware and software company, and
For sure.
and sensor company for that matter, and really, really cool technology. You've got a really cool job. I'll also just comment your command of the different aspects of the business, from the technology to the channel management and distribution, to just kind of the trends that are taking place, the broader trends in distribution and manufacturing, and understanding what's happening with the workforce and with labor. So it's really impressive. You've got quite a background. Tell our audience just a little bit about your path to the role that you have now, Evan.
Sure, yeah. So I went to college for mechanical engineering, then off to university for manufacturing engineering. I apparently really love engineering.
Yeah, right.
Got out in the world kind of in more of a sales role.
Okay.
And when
Technical
I joined
sales, or
yeah, technical sales.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And that's really where I got introduced to AMR technology.
Okay.
Was through that job. And I had a really, really good friend who worked at Auto Motors at the time.
Okay.
And he kept kind of saying, hey, man, look what I'm doing here. Look what I'm
Right.
doing here. And I got maybe a little jealous of all the cool stuff he was
Right.
doing. So that's when I joined Auto Motors about 7 years ago now. So as
Got
I
it.
worked through, joined in the applications engineering team, which really exposes you to a wide variety of different use cases, how the technology is used. So you end up getting a large amount of knowledge just from that area, because you kind of got to be a jack of all trades in that
Right.
position. And then kind of early on, we started looking at, hey, how can we start scaling? Right? Auto Motors is truly an OEM. How do we scale this thing? And that's where the partnership started coming along. And I kind of jumped on that right away, saying, hey, this is really cool.
Right.
You get to talk to a lot of people. It's a really cool thing. And it's really the evolution of the company. I want to be here. And that's really where I got into the partner program and started working up from there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's just a great pathway, and it shows for our young people who are interested or excited in careers in STEM where this can lead. Right. I'm guessing when you started out in in engineering in college, however many years ago, you probably weren't thinking that you would be you'd be a significant part of Auto Motors, this company that's leading in the AMR space, and yet here you are. And it's just always fascinating for me to hear those stories, especially as we sit here at Automate and meet really interesting people. I mean, it's such an emerging space. The future is so bright. The energy is so high. So it's really, really exciting. I want to ask you one final question, Evan, as we're wrapping up our time. And it's one we love to ask all of our guests here on the Tech Ed podcast. We're going to turn the clock back a little bit for you. And so before this amazing career at OTTO, before your time in technical sales, before your manufacturing engineering, mechanical engineering rather, education pathway. Let's go all the way back to when you're a 15-year-old kid, and you're maybe in your second year of secondary school, and you got your whole life ahead of you. And if you could give one piece of advice to yourself those years ago, what would that piece of advice be?
Wow, that's quite the loaded question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we ask it. The answers are always fascinating.
So the biggest thing maybe I'd say is take more risks.
Yeah.
I mean, by my own nature, I'm kind of type A. I like to plan a lot of things. I like to be in control of a lot of things.
Right.
Which led to me maybe not taking as many risks as I would have liked, right?
Sure.
So I think that's one of the biggest things is just be open to the opportunities, be open to what's in front of you, and hey, take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't hurt to take a risk, especially when you're young, because worst case scenario, you're going to learn something.
Yeah, you learn something and you start over. Exactly right. That's
Yep.
really, really good advice, and especially for people I think that are considering STEM fields. And I happen to be married to an engineer, so it gives me carte blanche to be able to say whatever I want about them. And a lot of folks that find their way into engineering tend to be a little more risk averse.
Yep.
And we've got to prove the process, and we've got to test it and test it and test it. I used to say in my years of leading manufacturing companies, there comes a time in the life of every project where you shoot the engineers and release the product because they will stay at it forever and ever and ever. And being able to take that risk, not just as a young person, but throughout your career, calculate a risk, don't jump off the side of a building or whatever, but knowing that there's always some version of a safety net. And the people that have the most interesting lives, the most exciting lives, in my view, are the people that tend to take those calculated risks and push themselves a little bit. I think that's really good advice, both for the 15-year-old Evan and for any 15-year-old at this time. Evan Pasnyk has been our guest on the Tech Ed podcast. He is the partner program technical manager for all of OTTO Motors, doing incredible things in the world of innovation, in the world of AMRs. Evan, appreciated our time together. You're a fascinating individual, tremendous command of all these different elements of the business, and it was a lot of fun to get to know you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's a lot of fun.